Hi. Hi, I'm Hillary from Escape the City, and I'm here with Gordon Eichorst from Impact Central. Um, Hello, Gordon.
How are you
Uh,
doing, Hillary?
yes, really well. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Great.
Great to
So
be here with you.
yeah, obviously, at Escape, we're on a mission to help people find work that matters to them and the world, which is how this partnership has come together. Because obviously, you are an impact entrepreneur
Mhm.
and helping people in the world with impact-driven startups. Um, and since 2018, you've worked with more than 40 impact-driven startups. Um, and through the accelerator program that Impact Central have, you have led on impact investing and created numerous financial structures that have delivered impressive impact and financial returns. Little note, which we always find interesting here at Escape, is that you began your career as an aerospace engineer and served on the NASA Advisory Council for 9 years.
That was great.
Very So we've just come together to ask a few questions all around kind of working an impact-driven startup, your experience of that, and what you can kind of share with
Yeah,
the people who've joined us today.
and I'm also
So
I'm also an escapee, so
yeah, well,
escaping the city in
exactly.
2017. So
Yeah, perfect. So how do you define an impact or purpose-driven startup?
yeah, so at Impact Central, what we focus on are startups that are for-profit startups, but also that in kind of equal measure, they're also focused on either an environmental or a social mission. And what we're really looking for are ways that the for-profit business and that mission can interact such that the more successful the business is, the greater the impact on the mission.
Yeah, and I think that's key. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like not
Hmm.
just a startup, but it's also about the mission and what it, what the purpose of it is that obviously draws people into that.
Exactly.
Um, and in your words, why might someone be drawn to an impact or purpose-driven startup? I guess kind of leading on
Yeah.
from that.
So I kind of break that into two parts because I think generally people are, I think most people are really excited about the word startup and what does that mean. And I think that startups are exciting because the rules aren't written, right? They're kind of looking at something from a different angle, and as a result, there's a real opportunity to rewrite the rules, to take a different approach to things, and that of course is at the founder level, but also throughout the entire organization. They're typically smaller organizations where every job counts, so everybody has an opportunity to make a change. And then when you throw impact on top of that, you get the added benefit of kind of going to work every day knowing that if that's a mission, and hopefully it is, that resonates with you, then you also get the excitement of knowing that as you're making this business become really successful, you're also making a dent in something that you feel is really important that needs to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, kind of addressing those problems that you care about and knowing that the people you're working with care about those too.
Hmm.
Um, so when I hear startup, it kind of gives me the impression that a business could be based on hope rather than substance. I don't know what you think about that, whether that's accurate or not.
I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, probably people think about it that way because startups are a little bit unclear by design. They, if we kind of knew how to fix things, the big companies would. So there's a lot of smart people, obviously, that are working in large companies, but they're constrained. So the structure of the company, the approach that they're taking, constrains the ability to do something different. And when a startup founder and the team are thinking about doing something different, what they're able to do is to take on a bold approach. They're able to, consider something that would seem far too risky to a large company because effectively the larger company would feel there's far too much to lose. And that's really obvious also why we need startups, because startups are able to take that, to do that innovation, to try something different, and that gives them the flexibility. And what we, the word that you talk about a lot with startups is that they pivot. And so in many ways they need to continue to adapt as they learn what they're trying to solve, and that continual adaptation is what allows them to then get to a successful conclusion.
Yeah, and I think that word risk is really key, because I think people often have, or may have, like preconceptions that it, it is risky and it is taking a risk. And obviously that's an element of working for a startup. But
Yeah.
do you see that as a kind of like positive, or a different kind of spin on that word risk?
Yeah, I think that people would like to believe, or would like to join the de-risked startup, but it's kind of what I was talking about in the last question. Where we were saying how it's important that the startup has less resources, it's a smaller organization, and it's doing something that's quite different. The way that it can compete with a larger company is that it has to take these risks. So it's kind of part and parcel to being on that journey, is that you have to want to take these risks because you're going to gain advantage through your innovation as opposed to through your size. So risk is definitely part of the equation, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It creates opportunities too when the risks play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it gives people, it feels like there's more of an opportunity, rather than kind of anything more. So are startup founders, in your opinion, just crazy risk takers that are throwing caution to the wind?
Well, I think that for most of us, for all of us, to a certain extent, even startup founders, change is a little bit of a scary thing. You don't. It's kind of the unknown, and so what I do find though is that there's a spectrum, and startup founders, I think, whereas we might look from the outside and say, "Wow, that's a crazy risk," I would say the difference is that startup founders have a vision, right? They're looking into the future, and they're seeing something that they believe is compelling, and they can actually kind of believe they see a pathway to getting there. So, their sense of risk is then different from what somebody from the outside looking in. And I think an important element is, kind of how good they are at kind of making that vision compelling and making people feel that the risk is not that great.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Often a lot of, say there's someone out there who wants to make a change, and they hear about a startup and they feel like they love their vision, and they really believe in it. And I
Hmm.
suppose the question is, what is the next step from that, from going from believing in a vision of a startup to actually kind of, yeah, moving forward?
Yeah, so I think that that is, it's really the people in the startup are the key thing, because you're talking about a small group of people. It might be as small as a few, or maybe 20, up to 20 or 30, but everybody kind of counts and matters, and there's everybody has important jobs because everybody's doing something where there's not like two or three levels of backup. So what you want to know is that you and the other people that are working together, that especially the people that are leading the founding team, has kind of that, both the inspiration to kind of see around corners, because there's always kind of these pivot opportunities coming up, but that they also have the commitment to it, because you want them to be the most committed people. They're willing to do this to the very end, and that's an important thing to know when you're kind of in the boat, rowing along with them.
Absolutely. And can you give more of an idea of what, actually working in a startup is like? Um,
Yeah, so I would say that the difference, one of the key differences between working for a larger organization, a larger corporate organization, and a startup is really, like, I'll just use two words: clarity and focus. And it's words that we talk a lot about on the accelerator, and they might seem like very similar words, but they have important distinctions. So at any startup, there needs to be a certain amount of clarity, because there's just so many kind of different ideas that are competing, and the group as a whole needs to have clarity about, well, this is what we're trying to accomplish. So one way to think about it is that you need to have this clarity of vision. Now the strategy can be changing, but the clarity in terms of the general direction of where we're heading with has to be really solid. And in doing that, that gives you tremendous purpose, and kind of knowing that the kind of creative aspects to the job that you're having and the adaptations you might make are going in that direction. And then the second side is really focus. And it's the reality is startups are always resource constrained. They're racing against money and time, and so trying to make things happen quickly, they need to be really focused, and everybody needs to try to get the things that they're responsible done in the fastest possible way, and also in consideration of what everybody else on the team is trying to do, so it works together in a really forward propelling manner.
Absolutely. And I think just on that note, like, what is for you in, I don't know, short, sharp, what is the most rewarding part of being in a startup?
I would think it has to be kind of that clarity gives you the sense of purpose, and so being able to go every day with that purpose and seeing that purpose actually happening. So sometimes it might seem like it's really slow, but when you look back, you can see all the changes that you've been a part of, and that's always really inspiring.
And in the blog that you wrote for Escape the City recently, you highlighted 6 areas that someone joining a startup might want to reflect on. Can you just share those for anyone that's listening?
Yeah. So, we talked about this. This is kind of in some ways, the bedrock of our program in terms of making things clear for what you have to get right in a startup. And so, since we believe that that's what a startup needs to get right, it's very much a good way for someone thinking about joining a startup to be asking these types of questions when they're thinking about, is this a startup that I want to join? And the first one has to be the business plan. So, and we're not talking about the financial model here. We're talking about kind of how does the business really work? How does it generate interest in its products and services? What exactly is it selling, and what is the trade-off between how it makes things and then what the customers are actually buying? So the second thing would be people, and people are just critically important because you're talking about a small team, and so it's not just the individuals, but also the culture and cohesiveness of the team is also really important. The third item would be finance. So obviously financial models, but not just that, but kind of why are investors investing? What is the opportunity? And understanding, what is the kind of runway that this startup has, and what does it need to use up in terms of financially to get there. Fourth one, would be communications. How are they getting their message out, and is it compelling for people? So we talk about building your tribe, people that are going to come around your business, not just your customers, but all the people that support you. The fifth one we've talked about, and we always mention, are customers. So you always want to be really customer centric, because you just need to have customers are going to be both obviously necessary for revenue, but also they're the ones that are giving you feedback if you're heading in the right direction. And then the last one that we always talk about is impact, where frankly we think that the direction of travel that we're going in from a societal point of view is that people want to we have big problems. So knowing that the business that you're working with is doing more than just kind of lining investors' pockets, but it's actually making a significant difference in the way the world is going to work, or really upending existing sectors is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that, just to kind of, I know that you're going to go through those 6 factors a lot more detail in the webinar that we've got coming up, which is Wednesday, the 26th of June at 1 p.m., which you can find details of and sign up to on the Escape the City's events tab. I don't know if you want to quickly run through anything else about the webinar that you think might be of interest to people.
I think it's going to be great. We have a couple guests coming, so we'll have some startup founders talking about what they look for in people, and we'll just be putting out some ideas in terms of things you want to be looking for, and creating an opportunity to just have a discussion around why might you consider joining an impact-driven startup. So I think it'll be a great hour.
Great, and we're really looking forward to it here at Escape as well.
Thanks, Hillary.
I think that's everything we've got time for, but thanks so much, Gordon, and look forward to the webinar next Wednesday.
Great.